Welcome back, everyone. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We are here at theCUBE's NYSE studio. Of course, this is our East Coast home. We have Palo Alto studios as well, connecting Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Tech and capital markets coming together. That's our NYSE Wired program, a CUBE original. And of course, the NYSE community is an open access network. Feeding entrepreneurs, getting access to deals. We've got a CUBE alumni here to talk about our AI factories. Here's Carmen Li. She's the CEO of two companies, SiliconData and Compute Exchange, all tied around data. And as we look at AI factories, one of the biggest questions that's come up over the past year and will be for this year is what's going on with the infrastructure? What's the performance look like? Is it worth the money? Is it performing properly? Are those workloads hitting what they need to do from a performance standpoint? Because AI factories about data in and out comes out. Carmen Li is back on theCUBE. Carmen, great to see you
Good
again.
to see you, John.
Yeah.
It's a great Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. SiliconData, love the name as you know, SiliconANGLE, pretty close to that. You're the data side on the silicon, and Compute Exchange, another company, two companies you're the CEO of.
That is right.
Love the dual CEO company thing, but there's synergy between them. First, explain SiliconData and Compute Exchange, because it's hand in hand, but different in the right ways.
You're 100% right. So we're creating this ecosystem while bringing so much transparency, efficiency to the compute world. Compute Exchange is exchange layer for actual spot compute trading. So think about if you need GPU clusters, 200 nodes of B200, let's say, for the next 3 months. There's a few ways to do it. You can call 75 Neoclouds provider yourself, or go to Exchange. Everything's more transparent. We have all the rubrics surfacing on the performance differences, pricing, terms, support level, so it's much easier for our startup of the world to procure GPUs. We love Compute Exchange, brings so much efficiency and transparency and price advantages to the ecosystem. SiliconData is a Bloomberg for GPUs. So we publish indices, which the GPU A100, H100, B200, which is available at Bloomberg Terminal and reference terminal. We also publish alternative data sets, benchmarking tools, which we'll talk about, SiliconMark, that we have seen very interesting results across 20 Neocloud providers. And lastly, we also provide different application tools on top of that. So it's a great tool, sister companies.
Yeah. I like the exchange. I think that's going to come into like the demand curve. SiliconData, you mentioned it's like the Bloomberg terminal for what's going on benchmarks. I wrote a post about Lambda, thanks to your great report, seeking the holy grail, why AI performance is now a systems problem. Obviously that's in context of some of our reporting around AI factories, but you had put out an independent benchmark on GPU platforms with your SiliconMark capabilities. This was an amazing data. Of course, it turns into media because it was high quality data, but you're measuring the internode bandwidth and latency in this case. But this is the kind of level of detail that gets into the weeds a bit, but it's important because it's like a car engine or an airplane engine. You want to have a health meter on what's going on in the system, depending on what it's designed to do.
That's exactly right. So one of the things we observe in the marketplace is nowadays people treating H100 the same across all different providers, which you can't blame people because there's no other transparencies available, no data points, to your point. So we're the only third-party benchmarking services which we're surfacing not just the flop performances, but the memory hierarchy numbers from D to Ds to HBMs to L2 cache, all different memory bandwidth to the users. And then we run things independently and very efficiently. And then we actually have a paper coming out very soon, talk about all the findings.
And the reason why I call it Seeking the Holy Grail, it's a little bit of an old school reference to the Monty Python Seeking the Holy Grail, which they never found, by the way, but it was a seeking. But I think the systems angle on this is huge because the number one thing we're seeing in this AI infrastructure that you're also reporting is the AI infrastructure build out and the developer capabilities. And that they're all converging into be frictionless, scalable, low latency, high velocity. But the problem is that these system designs aren't a one-trick implementation. I can buy a big monster Blackwell rack with NVIDIA if I have that use case, but if I'm an enterprise, I might have that and maybe a couple other different configurations based upon the workload. So this opens up kind of the design side. So I think there's a huge market for the design side. And I want to ask you, as you look at the data, do you see the same thing? And how are you guys tuning your data acquisition to kind of understand? Because it might be, hey, I'm going to have a couple GPUs here, more compute over here. I'm going to change my memory architecture because it's less expensive for what I'm doing.
Right.
but I'll still pay the big bucks for the training and inference and reinforced learning over here.
Trade-off.
So there's a trade-off, but it's a distributed, heterogeneous environment.
Yes, yes.
You have to have an analytics.
Your intuition is 100% right. I think unless you have a limited pool of capital forever, you can keep getting the greatest and latest, the best interconnect everywhere, the best energy, best cooling. Usually people facing certain level trade-off, and sometimes it's for the right reason, right? You don't need the lowest latency for every workload. You don't need the highest HBF for every single thing. Depends, is it training, is it inferencing, what you're looking to do. So your intuition is 100% right. We see a big variance within the whole new eco cloud, including hyperscalers, to them in the whole pool as well. So even for the same GPU configuration, the variance we observed across 6,300 tests is about 37% variance. It's really high. You arguably, you're probably paying the same amount, but you're getting a very big difference in performances. You might not even know that. You might know, hey, I supposed to finish my cycle at this time. Why is it delayed? What happened to it? What's the causation? Is it the Neocloud provider? Is it GPU itself? Is it memory? What is going on? So lack of transparency really hindered the whole industry growth. So what we try to do is bring that before you start your workload. So you have the understanding the trade-off. You understand this is how much I'm paying, this is what I'm supposed to get. So everything is a lot more about calculated advice, suggestions.
Well, I love SiliconData. In fact, on that story I wrote, I went out and compared that to our AI engine, and I got some great quotes from NVIDIA. Senior Vice President Gil Shaner, who captured this clearly, he said on theCUBE, distributed AI only works when thousands of accelerators behave like one supercomputer. That requires low jitter, deterministic interconnects, otherwise the GPUs are just waiting on the data. In your report, it showed Lambda, for instance, really did well on the PCIe connections. Again, in context with Gil at NVIDIA, who's an engineer and architect, he's saying it's not just about the GPUs, although they're in the GPU business, they're engineering systems. So if you don't think about these interconnects, the performance could really plummet and be inefficient. The expensive GPUs are just waiting around when they need to be fed.
Exactly. So Lambda especially outperformed in the host of device categories. So I thought was pretty good is what they did is, especially if you have a lot of data need to moving outside the whole ecosystem, moving to the GPU. So for example, heavy load inference on large language models, or real time, right? Host to device connection, PCI is very critical. Obviously you can do XXM, but it's all become dollar per token, right? What's your trade-off for that? And then there's other things Lambda does well. So we test everything from the flops to, as I said, different hierarchy of different memories. We also notice sometimes people are actually getting better. Right? Doesn't mean you always stay where you are. People make an effort. They realize one of the Neocloud provider is pretty interesting. They start working with us. They realize that, hey, I didn't know we didn't do well in this sector. They're really low in one particular memory hierarchy. So they fixed it, and then we test again. It's actually now at the medium. So for them, sometimes, even for the provider, it's not very clear.
Yeah, and the data helps. Where do you see this going? Because I see big promise in how you're doing that. And we'll get to the exchange in a second, but on SiliconData, what's next for you? What are some of the things people are resonating with? What's the traction point? And then where does it go next?
So many things. The market growing so fast, which is exciting. We have many design houses now. We have NVIDIA, which is obviously the leader. We have AMD, which I'm excited about their newest generation. We have Sambanova, Cerebras. We have all the independent design houses and AWS TPUs. So with all design house chips, you need a way to compare them side by side. You need to have a common inputs and common output to say, hey, for this particular set, here's the commercial type, which we understand per GPU per hour, roughly, and here's why they are different. Which one should you pick for your use cases? It's not one best thing fits all. It's about education, about awareness, about transparency. So, that will be.
So I interviewed Michael Dell and also the CTO of Dell Technologies, John Rose, a year and a half ago, and they were the first ones, John Rose in particular, the CTO, who identified that the AI factory certainly would be relevant. And that was obvious to us when we talked then. Now it's clear. But one of the things he brought up in talking to his customers in the enterprise is an AI factory implies like it's a server in the old days, but it's not a server. It's like a bunch of servers and it's a system components as you guys are measuring. And the number one question for enterprises, how do I configure these? What do I load on them? Now they know their workloads and they're going to plan for AI native workloads. So this idea of tuning is coming up a lot in the enterprise. So I think what you're doing is very relevant there. What's your reaction to that and how do you see enterprises adopting, because this is where they're going to need to have, hey, I'm going to buy a car for this road, I want the big fast race car for the track. It's almost like you want to, you can't.
I don't know if it's the right answer, John. You're probably a better person to answer this question. I just feel like right now there's newer chips, coming out every year. I know people are very excited about Rubin. There are people are still trying to get the B300 up and running, right? So people, do you need B300? Maybe we see a huge jump in H100 prices in the last few weeks. I don't know if you noticed. It's about 10%, which is quite a lot for a very mature chip, right? So you can see demand supply definitely are still shifting around. You might not need the latest and greatest. And then think about, to your point, system level, right? Not just the GPU configuration, it's about the CUDA libraries. Which version are you using? Is it to 28? Is it 30? When do you switch? Is it configuration? Is it interconnect? It's a lot of thought. It's a lot of things you have to test and fine tune. If I were a large enterprises, I would do is really try to leverage Neoclouds as much as I can, or hyperscalers, right? So then you can test and verify before you invest a lot of money, because those servers are millions of dollars.
Actually, you brought up a good point. I want to touch on that because I think I've been interviewing a lot of Neoclouds and the hyperscalers, all of them, who they are. I've also been interviewing their customers. It's the Metas of the world. Even Amazon and the hyperscalers are buying from Neoclouds. So what's interesting is that they look at the available GPUs and systems as an aggregate. And so they don't really care too much about just core weave. I want to get it from wherever I can. So there's almost an abstraction of how can all the Neoclouds work together. So that brings up the point of, if you have an observation space for your data across the Neoclouds, you can help provide direction for, say, a Meta or even a hedge fund.
The utilization, the capacity, so.
And let them compete on their value.
Exactly, so what your costs are not the same. Should it be the same? Maybe it shouldn't, right? There's also regional differences, right? And I don't know if you know start a big build up in the greater south, right? Maybe they need so much GPU for latency reasons. So we definitely see a lot of movements. So we do a really good job at tracking inventories globally from Compute Exchange. So obviously for the clients, right, that when they RFQ a particular reserve request to Compute Exchange, we have to match them up with the relevant data centers and Neoclouds. And then not only we need to know, do you have 100 H100 available, nodes available? It's more about, hey, is it SOC 2 compliant? Hey, what kind of support do you provide? Hey, can they, to your point, stitch up with other providers to form a bigger cluster, because no one, had enough. It's still a seller's market today. So that's something we try to figure out. How can we help our clients to match up the right compute resources? And
that's on the Compute Exchange side, because that solves the problem of my workload has these parameters to them or requirements.
And that changed.
It's not just give me some GPUs. Does it fit my workload?
The data center qualities, the coolings, and it comes down to operation systems. What Red Hat you're running, what kind of Linux? Ideally, it should be uniform so you have a better experience.
So if I get this right, correct me if I'm wrong. So what I hear you saying is you got a Compute Exchange for understanding what's going on in the environment, SiliconData to verify those configurations.
SiliconMark.
SiliconMark. Okay, SiliconMark. Explain that. So SiliconMark is what? That's on the exchange side or data?
It's the data side. Think about SiliconMark almost like the Moody's for securities, but that's the Moody's for GPU clusters. So we do benchmark on the actual hardware, and then we track the UID. So depreciation schedule, we know exactly the same GPU cluster, when it depreciates, the flops will decrease. When the CPU gets swapped out, the UID will change. So we track all the machine level information, and then we provide fair market value assessment. So by year 3, the market is trading H100, say 30 cents on the dollar. Your machine may be much better than the average, 3-year vintage. You should be trading higher. So we provide that fair market value assessment. The exchange is purely exchange where transaction happen. The matching happen, either rental or retail. So
SiliconMark is in SiliconData, but you also do benchmarking. That's kind of the Moody's,
we
verifying. That's almost putting the stamp of approval, certifying, if you will, kind of what that is. Okay, good. So they all work together. So I have to ask you, what's it like being the CEO of 2 companies? It's kind of one company, but like it's two different companies,
It's two
right?
very different companies. It's, one is
By the way, I love that, by the way.
oh, thank you, thank you.
Most people are like, whoa, you can't be CEO of two companies.
I don't think it's easy. One is like a NYSE, another is like Bloomberg.
Yeah.
There's so much synergies. Obviously, before I commit to this dual structure, though, I have concerns. I have two kids, and I have two companies. It's not the easiest thing. But the thoughts I really have is the whole thing worthwhile? Now I'm 5 months in,
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I mean, the decision is I bring so much more value to both sets of customers. Not only do I see global data, global movement, global volatility, creating financial products,
Yeah.
benchmarking, I'm really contextualized with actual deal flows.
Yeah.
I know exactly who is asking what kind of GPU when. I know exact pain points, real-time physical pain points people experiencing. From Neocloud side, from our customer side, it is so important to have that transparency and bring the synergies.
Yeah.
Now everyone benefits. Well, I'm the only one sort of, unfortunately, sacrificing sleep a little bit and fun time with my kids.
I know you've
but-
been doing a lot of traveling, but my point is I think that's okay because they have such synergies.
It's a lot of
You got the holistic, but they're also different competencies, but they play well together. So it's almost good to have separate companies, maybe separate investors, or you can maybe grow one
Exactly.
faster.
One is a marketplace, right? It's
Yeah.
its own challenges and upside. One is a very traditional, in my mind, data company, right? Data, financial products, and intelligence layer, right?
So what's your vision? When we last talked last year, I love this whole financial play of the commodities, not commodities, but like the GPUs.
The
The
virtual
tech, it's
product,
like
yep.
tech meets finance, which is our wheelhouse.
Yep.
What's your vision on? Do you see that continuing? And what's the state of the current market?
I think
Are
it's
GPUs up?
accelerating. I think, it's a great poly market. You should work on poly market. So I think this is accelerating.
Yeah.
It's not even, it's just not growing. It's beyond the linear projection I have in my mind. We are planning to launch futures options on top of our indices. The market needed. I have so many financiers, so technology companies, so all the ecosystem participants express interest. And at the same time, we have token. A lot of people are going to care more about token prices fluctuation versus GPUs, because they're 1 degree removed from GPU themselves. So we have token indices, token products, token data sets. And at the same time, we're helping people think through, hey, what's your long-term strategy with the total cost of ownership?
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving pieces,
Yeah.
but financialization is definitely going to be
Yeah.
very critical.
What's been the feedback from, say, people who care about this? Because I can see clearly risk management, pricing, investment like private equity companies, hedge funds.
Yep.
There's a lot of bets going on in the sector, and it's kind of a new motion. New,
It is.
New mechanisms.
The next
What's the
18 months,
what's
right?
been the reaction?
I think was the biggest trade of our century in a way, right? The next 18 months, and we know the options expire in a year and a half and 2 years, right? So people want clarity. If you really go down too deep, right? People want clarity. What's the depreciation schedule should be? Are those things really worth nothing in a certain amount of years? Who decide that, right? What kind of volatility are we looking to see? How is that going to correlate with any other asset classes, right? Things will only be clear once we have more data, more way for people to express opinions. Because right now, you can long short NVIDIA, but what else can you really do, right? It's almost tell you, hey, there's no oil futures. The only thing you can do is long short ExxonMobil.
You know, one of the
sufficient.
things I saw with Burry's comments about AI and NVIDIA, which I thought he got all wrong, was he was basically looking at the GPU as like an asset, like a house. But if you look at the older versions of NVIDIA stuff, they're being used in other use cases. So
L40 is still in use.
So I think the reuse is a new variable. What's your reaction to that? Have you seen that in the data?
Yes, so obviously we capture all different chips from consumer grade, so RTX of the world, to older chips, is L40s. I mean, today L40s, some hyperscalers still charge you 40, 50 cents on an hour. L40s, imagine that?
Yeah.
Right? So, there are different use cases of different GPUs. As I said, today we're still experiencing somewhat seller's market. People want to do whatever they can get their hands on.
Carmen, I'm really impressed by your vision, but also your executing. I have to ask you a kind of question to define what a spot market is relative to GPUs for folks that don't know, that aren't in the weeds, because they hear, oh, there's a GPU spot market, or these kinds of new markets. Explain very elementary for the folks that aren't in the industry or they may be in business, they're super smart, they read the SiliconANGLE, New York Times, maybe not know all the stuff you know. What is these markets? What is a GPU spot market?
It sounds complicated. It's actually at the core. It's very 1800s. Think about today. If you're a farmer, you try to sell corn, right? You go to partner and say, "I want to sell corn," and people say, "I want to buy corn," right? I want to buy corn from you for the next 3 months, right? So it's actually corn transacted in Chicago, right? So compute exchange is the actual GPU resources getting transacted, right? You get what you pay for. You get what you promise to deliver, right? This is actually transaction either through reserve rental rate or through actually people say, hey, I want to get rid of A100s. Yeah. You may be like, hey, I can use A100s.
So it's the current price of GPU cycles that you might need.
You actually get your hands on the resource itself. On the other side, SiliconData is publishing indices. Think about all the crude oil future indices, all the indices that people publish, which you can't really get GPU by looking at indices, right? It's a market demand supply metrics, right? So it's kind of different. The futures obviously behave like futures. Yeah. You're trying to hedge your volatility for the forward. Yeah. Yep.
I've heard NVIDIA and Jensen say this. So I've talked to other founders like Andrew from Argentum. It's like electricity.
Exactly.
What's the price of electricity today?
You turn it on, right?
And I'm using it. So developers can just come in, interface into an abstraction, it could be a marketplace, and that pricing will be reflected, the underlying pricing powered by SiliconData and compute exchange.
Yeah, it's a perfect analogy. So electricity today, they have spot market as well as futures market. Depends what we need to do. You and me, we don't really care, right? We just turn on the switches and things just work, right? Think about the
But someone has to track it.
Someone
don't leave the lights on.
Exactly.
Turn the lights
off. The building manager will care. The factory manager will care. Yeah. They have to procure electricity. The data center manager will care. So they're the one doing the spot market. Yeah. I wanted this how much gigawatts today. Yeah. They're the one buying the electricity.
I think you're ahead of the curve on this in a good way, and I think I'm glad you're getting out front. In the cloud computing market, obviously the rise of cloud, we saw exponential growth, the great ecosystem, and then as it, not matured, but as it got kind of more settled in production workloads, FinOps became important, observability, so all the instrumentation around, okay, what's the economics, we get how it drives value, but now operating costs become a huge thing. This is early days for the AI infrastructure.
It is exciting times where we can hopefully shape the system, be a little more efficient. Yep. The only way to make things efficient is being transparent about ideally everything, right? From commercials to your terms and services, to your support, to the actual machine itself.
Carmen, great to see you again. Thanks for coming in and participating as an expert in our AI Factory series, and congratulations on the 2 companies you're continuing to run. And
thank you.
We'll keep following you. We'll see you on LinkedIn and X and social handles, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much, John.
Okay, I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. This is our AI Factory series where the leaders come in and talk about what they're working on, but really they're driving this infrastructure that will power in the agentic infrastructure, and ultimately AI, physical AI and physical factories. You're starting to see the digital and physical world come together, and AI infrastructure is going to move to autonomous, all going to be instrumented, measured, priced, consumed, and developed on. Really super exciting future for AI. We're doing our part to bring it to you. Thanks for watching.